Hey everyone, welcome to the squad. This is the Park Squad Pod, a podcast where four friends catch up and chat about all things Disney, day to day life, and more. My name is Haley, and I'm your host for today's episode, and I'm here with the rest of the squad.
I'm Tommy.
I'm Brandon.
And I'm Heidi.
Welcome to episode 9, our movie club episode 1, Lilo and Stitch.
Woohoo!
So, this is our official first, we have two characters in the back, but
Yep.
It's our first official movie club review. So we're going to go over what our thoughts were of the movie. We both, obviously, unfortunately, separately, rewatched the movie this week. And we're going to go over what we thought, anything that we found that was new. And then I did a little research on the movie so that I could kind of share it before.
Love it.
But hopefully, you guys, if you're listening, that you've watched it. If not, go ahead. If you haven't seen it in a while, pause. But come back, pause this, go watch the movie, and then come back, and then you can share your opinions with us and see if we're right or wrong.
Yeah, it's a quick watch too. So pause this real quick. Go ahead, bang out Lilo and Stitch, and come back and join us.
You also could make a whole evening out of it, which you guys did. You guys made a whole little evening out of it, which I was going to say.
Yep. So we were going to share that. I was going to share that. I was going to just give kind of the Disney Plus synopsis, just in case anyone is a stranger to the movie as a whole.
Yeah.
So Disney Plus it says, get ready to crash land on Earth with Stitch, a runaway genetic experiment from a faraway planet. As he wreaks havoc on the Hawaiian Islands, he becomes the mischievous adopted puppy, in quotation marks, of an independent little girl named Lilo, and together they learn about loyalty, friendship, and ohana, the Hawaiian tradition of family.
Love it.
And it is 1 hour and 28 minutes long. So it is a quick watch.
Yeah. And I think that's even like including credits. I think it's probably even shorter than that. I think it's probably closer to like an hour 15, which is awesome. It's, peak
perfect
movie length, I feel like.
So I will give a little bit about just like some background that I found of Lilo and Stitch 2. So this movie was released in 2002. And it was kind of at the end, I just was actually reading an article and it was talking about how the director, Chris Sanders, went and kind of pitched this idea based off a movie idea he wrote in the 80s about an alien that like lived in the woods among animals. And so he pitched it to Disney and Disney said, yes, but it needs to take place in like the human world. So this was right after like all of those big princess movies kind of from like 1989 through 2000-ish.
Yeah.
And so they decided to kind of go on like a smaller scale because everything was like really grand and stories that were known. And so they decided that Lilo and Stitch was kind of a movie that they could control they had more freedom of because their budget wasn't going to be as high. And the budget for this movie was $80 million, which still feels high to us, but is very low for like
pennies nowadays.
Hitter.
Yeah, for like a primary Disney Animation Studios like theatrical release, it's not crazy. I think people kind of associate animation with being cheaper, which is not always necessarily the case, especially when they're doing like the hand drawn. The hand drawn tends to be a lot more expensive, which is unfortunately why they don't do it as much anymore.
Even though it's so good.
Yeah, even though it looks great.
But yeah, so Brandon and Heidi kind of touched on it. We made like an evening out of it, which I've been seeing a lot on like TikTok, but it's mostly families. Where they do like they'll pick like a Disney or a Pixar or a Universal Studios movie, and then they'll make like a little meal out of it and do like kind of like a themed night. So we kind of took that and ran with it as a little date night.
Yeah.
I don't really, if you guys don't know me very well, you do. Brandon and Heidi know me, but the listeners might not know me very well. I'm not great at doing anything halfway.
Yeah. Little date night was what is it, oxymoron?
Yeah, so I planned, for me it was restrained. But we ended up making some spam musubi, which is like fried spam, and it's like marinated and then in like a rice and seaweed roll. It was real good. Brandon, I think you would really like it. Did you have it at the festivals?
Yes. And it was like my favorite thing. I could eat that all day. Like I would just be over there with you guys popping down that sushi. I think it'd be so delicious.
We ate way too many of them.
Yeah, entirely too many, but it was really good. I had never had like the full piece, I don't think. And yeah, I was very much into it. It's really good.
Yeah, so we did that, and then we made like a Hawaiian like style, it's probably not style, like Hawaiian inspired like pineapple chicken with like tomatoes, and then obviously peanut butter sandwiches for Pudge. And then I found Sonic sells a drink called
Ocean
Ocean
water.
Water.
Yeah.
And I never had it, but I've seen like all of the like soda girlies on TikTok drink them.
Yeah, like
And
water
so,
talk where they're
yeah.
like sprucing up their water. Yeah.
So I bought like the little packs from Amazon and I mixed that with some coconut milk. And so we had some like little
Yum.
tiki drinks. But the movie did go by so quickly that I feel like it was like the perfect for like dinner and a movie because you
Yeah.
eat it and then the movie is kind of done.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. It was definitely a nice pairing for sure. And Lilo and Stitch does have like the strongest summery Hawaii vibes too. So it was nice to kind of get in that mindset a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little chilly, but it was good.
Yeah, not in here though. The vibes were
I love
warm
it. High
and
vibe.
tropical.
I love
And
it.
you guys watched it this week, right?
We did.
Yep.
We watched it Friday night. So we had like a busy-ish weekend with Heidi's family coming here. Her like older brother came Friday, and then her mom and younger brother came yesterday. So like recording this on Sunday, but they came Saturday. So we're like, how do we fit this in on the weekend? And we're going live on Saturday. So how do we do it? So we're like, after her brother left, we're like, we're gonna put it on. And we had like a little snack, nothing on the level of you guys Hawaiian like inspired, but we sat down, watched it, and I was like honestly so happy to watch it because I will say, like we kind of like I talked about this earlier, but I was kind of in the camp of like Stitch is maybe a bit overrated, and I didn't really get why people love it. Why is there so much like merch out there? Like, why is this a big thing? And I respect it, and like I understand it now. So I apologize if anyone thought that I wasn't on the train, but I feel like I'm at the back of the train, climbing on and hopping on to the Lilo and
At
Stitch.
least you're aboard now. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all that counts.
For sure. You also loved like him, I think, when you were younger. Like you liked his old ride. You have some stuff of Lilo and Stitch. So
Yeah, I feel like I'm more of a Lilo person, but
Yeah.
Stitch as a character is cute too. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, and I wish that like you could meet Lilo.
Yeah.
I think that maybe at Alani you can sometimes. They like I think that she might be there, and it's kind of I feel like they stray away from like humanized characters as like a meet
Yes.
and greet because if it can't be a human, obviously like you can't meet like a child.
Yeah.
And
for
but
sure.
like to have like a
Like-
costume of a person
Yeah.
that even though they're animated sometimes is
fur.
like a little bit off-putting.
Yeah, I want to say I've seen a Lilo
I have.
costume, and it's really funny. Yeah, it's
I
because it is
think-
just like a human child,
Yeah.
like little girl, but the big costume like waddling around.
Yeah,
looks
and she's
like
got like her big head.
yeah,
You
yeah,
should
like big
meet her
hard
at
hair.
what's that restaurant? Ohana.
At
Can you-
Ohana?
yeah, can you meet her there or no?
Oh, I don't
Maybe.
know.
That's a good
Let's
question.
look.
Because
look
I
it
thought
up
that you
while
could
we-
there, but I know when I
during
was
a certain meal you can.
maybe because when I
It's-
was younger, we met her. They had Lilo and Stitch at Animal Kingdom somewhere. Because I have like a picture where she's holding my arm like this, and Stitch is there, and I thought that it was so funny because yeah, like it's this kid character, but this big costume.
Yeah, I think they did at Animal Kingdom like a Lilo and Stitch takeover because I have
Maybe
a
that's why.
dinosaur pin that is like Lilo or Stitch's like adventure or
Maybe
whatever, like
that's
around
why.
that, like a personal tie-in. So it wouldn't surprise me if, yeah, both of them were kind of available as meet and greets
Yeah.
in that park.
Well, and I know they used to do, or they still do, the Stitch takes over like the Tiki Room
Yeah,
in Disneyland. I think it's
Maybe.
Disneyland.
I know
Okay.
it's like a permanent fixture in Japan.
Maybe
isn't
that's
it?
what I'm
Yeah, I think
thinking
it's
of.
in Tokyo Disneyland.
It has like the little like red and white like surfboard like
Maybe,
crashed
yeah.
into the front of it,
Mhm.
yeah.
which I would love.
Me too.
I want that.
I think
there.
it's a fun twist on like a dated ride.
And like you
agree.
were saying, like Heidi loved like Stitch's Great Escape or whatever in
Oh.
Magic Kingdom, but now there's just nothing there, so I don't know
all.
why they took it away.
Yeah, I think
No.
this is like it's kind of insane how there's nothing. Like I think this is a really big character, and like that you can just kind of see Stitch like roaming around Tomorrowland, and that's kind of it. Is
Yeah,
kind
and
of
his
like
50th
wild.
statue was there for a little bit in
Yeah.
Tomorrowland.
Yeah.
And now you can see him at Typhoon Lagoon with like a lay on. That's about all that they got, and then all the merch. But like, I think that they should have something, and I don't.
Well, and they
like, I
have
think,
the building.
yeah,
It was just sitting
right?
there.
Yeah, interesting.
Because before that was Alien, and it was
Alien
actually
Encounter, yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
It was so scary.
And then now, then it was like the burping in the face, and now there's nothing.
Yeah,
It's very
which is a
interesting.
shame. And you're right. I think that like Disney has to sell so much merch, like Stitch merch,
Yeah,
because like children like it. There's like a group of adults that love Stitch.
Yeah.
Like even
And
I
they-
feel like non-Disney people like Stitch.
yeah. Like, and they do whole collections on Stitch. I think right now there's like a monthly food collection, and it's all Stitch. It's like
Yeah.
a touch, a pin, and other
Oh,
like
yeah.
ears, and it's all him just like eating different food.
They did
Which-
that a couple years ago, like right after they did the
like Minnie's main
Minnie's main
attraction.
attraction.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. They did like Stitch with like Lady and the Tramp, and he just had like spaghetti and meatballs like
Yeah, I was
on
gonna
his
say,
head
they
as a plush.
made him look like Pizza the Hut. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
like, and now it's a whole new one for this year where it's like him with a Mickey ice cream bar or like a Dole Whip or popcorn, and it's all Stitch. It's very
So it must sell.
must
So
sell,
bring it
very
back to the
popular.
parks.
I agree.
I can go over before we get into like really talking about what we thought. Now that we've talked about watching it, I can get
Yeah.
over like some ins and outs of it that I
Sure.
found while I was like kind of looking it up. So,
Yeah,
I did talk about how much it cost to make. So it was 80 million to make, and then we also found the numbers for how much it made. So opening weekend domestically, it made 35 million, and then total domestically, it made 145 million.
nice.
And then worldwide, it made 273 million. So nearly 200 million over what it cost to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah. A little box office kind of fun fact tidbit. Typically, when like you're looking at box office, and I don't know who's interested in this, but typically the rule of thumb is you take the budget and then you double it for like advertising and marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then anything over that doubled amount is profit. So everywhere,
So they
everything
made like
from 160 to
100 and
273 would, in theory, be profit. So yeah, what, like 113
113.
million dollars in 2002. So not
Beautiful.
too shabby. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
First
then
one
we
we-
kind of talked about it a little bit that music is like a big part. And I think we'll talk about it more when we start getting into the actual movie. But while I was watching at the end credits, because usually like I just watch the movie and then I skip out of like any of the end
Yeah.
credits. But because we were doing this, I wanted to know kind of like who did the score and who put everything together. So the person who put the score together is Alan Silvestri. And so then I looked up the other things that he's done, and he did the score for Forrest Gump, which is hugely iconic.
Yeah.
And then also all of the Back to the Future movies. So those were like big ones that I thought were cool that he did those as well.
Yeah.
And then with music as well, because a lot of the music I feel like isn't score based. Like there's some when they're like on their adventures and things,
Yeah.
but a lot of it is just like
needle drops, like popular
Yeah.
songs.
yeah,
kind of,
exactly. So
Yeah.
there's obviously a ton of Elvis, which was a late addition. Lilo being
Oh.
really into Elvis was a late addition into the movie, so it was kind of all written, and then they were looking for like what music to put in and things like that, and so they added that part of her personality. But they also like Chris Sanders, the one who directed it, so he wrote it, directed it, and voiced Stitch,
Yeah.
which was super cool.
So cool.
But when he was like kind of trying to put together, because he's the one that pitched the idea, he said that if they can get Silvestri on board, like they're golden, like they can get it through. And so they did, but then Silvestri wanted to work along with, because they felt like Hawaii wasn't done justice in Hollywood at the time. So 2002, they felt like it was really kind of like, I don't know, like Hollywood glamorized instead
Yeah.
of using like the actual culture of the islands. And so they went and they met with like a local. And then so the songs, like the Hawaiian roller coaster, was from like a children's choir from a guy who
Wow.
met. And like the guy wasn't really on board. And then he said that he went into like the drawing room, the story room, and he said, everyone here is as crazy as I am. And so then he like joined in and he did like the two main like culturally like relevant songs in the movie, which I thought was really cool.
Oh,
It's
that's
so cool. I
Yeah,
feel like that it's nice because I think when they can do like the representation right, I think it's perfect. Like when you can really hit it on, and I think that they did for sure.
And I think Disney does a good job of going to the people and saying like, hey, these are the thoughts we have. How can we do it? Like work with us instead of just saying, I'm going to put together something and like, you can endorse it. Like say it was good. They go and like get the input from the people who actually live there and experience it.
Yeah, it's funny that Elvis was like a late entry into the movie, and his music and kind of just aura plays such a big part, especially in the early half, because like you mentioned, a lot of that Hollywood portrayal of Hawaii is due to Elvis Presley movies,
Mhm.
where he would kind of just show up and sing his songs and then like woo a woman, and that was like the 90-minute movie from like the 1960s and stuff like that. So it's really cool to kind of see the like attention to detail and levels of care, and how kind of layered all of the themes and sort of like thought was put into kind of every level and all the different aspects.
And then I just had one more, and then we'll get into like the bulk of it. I don't want to keep too many because I don't know who's interested in hearing the
Lilo and Stitch fun
backstories, but
facts,
I
yeah.
thought it was cool.
Yeah.
But Chris Sanders also did the screenplay for Mulan and How to Train Your Dragon. So he
Wow.
did a bunch, and there's more like
Yeah.
Crudes and things, but I thought that those were
Cool.
2 like pretty big ones that are
Yeah.
still popular.
And he's got a movie coming out this year.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the
What?
something
Alien?
robot.
Oh,
Something.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
about a
that's what I
robot who
meant.
lives in the forest, but it looks
Wild
good.
Robot, I
Yeah,
think?
yeah,
Yeah,
Wild Robot. It looks good.
DreamWorks.
I watched the trailer. It looks really
Yeah.
interesting.
Like, are they still doing like a live action as well? Aren't they doing like a Disney Plus Lilo and Stitch, and he's coming back? I heard that. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely quieted down. I know a
Yeah.
lot of the live action remakes were not well received, so it wouldn't be surprised if this got maybe put on the back burner
Yeah.
or
You don't want it to be like Sonic.
yeah.
Like, you
Right.
can't have Stitch
That's
turn
very
into the
true.
live action
Yes,
Sonic and
yeah,
it just
for
be
sure.
terrifying.
But I do think it is something that would find an audience. So I hope maybe they're kind of just taking their time and making it worthwhile, opposed to some of the other ones that
Agreed.
people really just found kind of retreads of the original and
Yeah.
didn't add a lot of value.
Well, and it's funny that he has a movie coming out because I literally, as we were watching it, I said, who wrote this? Like,
Yeah.
who's responsible for this? Because where is he?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we haven't had, like, this is so good. And the movies coming out of Disney right now are just like kind of mid, in my opinion. And so I'm like, bring Chris Sanders back, get him to do something else for Disney, like revamp the feeling that we got when you got Lilo and Stitch in 2002.
Yeah, I put
agree.
it in my letterbox, but yeah, like the first like 10 minutes of this movie is, in my opinion, funnier than like the last 5 movies that Disney Animation Studios has put out.
Yeah.
So
But we can get into kind of like our thoughts, like your highs, your lows. I think that we'll throw it to you guys first because I feel like
Okay.
we've watched it more recently than you guys had. So you may have had some more discoveries on favorite parts and things like that.
You want to
Yeah.
go first and take it away? What do you
Sure.
think?
I'll say that I didn't remember a lot of it going into it, so it felt like watching a movie fresh, which I really liked because I don't like watching movies over and
Yeah.
over, especially like when I remember them. So that was like a nice surprise. And I think it was like a lot funnier than I expected, and almost like they're like treading that line where it's like they say stuff that's like almost on the line of now I feel like they wouldn't put in a movie because it would be like inappropriate, but like it's really just it's in there and it's funny and it made me laugh. So yeah.
I thought it was hilarious. I wrote down like some notes, but it was just like one-liners that I loved that I thought were hilarious. And I think that I never really realized how great like the side characters are. I feel like when you think of this movie, you think of like Lilo and Stitch, obviously because they're like in the title, but you think of Stitch mostly. But like Lilo's amazing. I think she's so funny. I love just like lines. Like I wrote some here, which I'll get to them probably like as we go through the whole thing. But just even like when he comes in her room the first time and she goes, "Oh, look how curious the puppy is," and it's like that is just like so funny to me that she is just like so like these like little one-liners are so perfect. And I also think I love how there's like a few different like adventures or like characters kind of going on separate paths like at the same time, but they're all like in the same story. I think that I liked that a lot. And I just thought, yeah, like you said, Heidi, that it was way funnier than I ever thought that it would have been. And like I just like laughed a lot. I cried a few times. I was like pleasantly surprised with this one for sure.
That's what with the one where like, oh, the puppy's so curious. I think that also the juxtaposition between them,
Yeah.
because then like Stitch immediately like shoves her down and gets in her bed and like drinks like the bottle like from her bed, and Lilo's like, what in the world? Like,
Yeah.
but it is so funny. She gets this like blue monstrosity from the pound and is just like immediately on board. Like,
Yeah.
it's so bought in. It's like, oh yeah, like this is my dog. Like,
Yeah.
sure, it looks like a total like monster, but it's my puppy. Like,
and I think that was like perfectly done. Like even the woman at the shelter, like
Yeah.
there's like the red-haired woman who gives her the puppy, and then Nani goes in with her.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, like what do you want to name it? And she's like, Stitch. And she's like, Stitch isn't a dog name. And then Nani's like, don't say that. And she's like, in Iceland, but here it's a perfect name. And so it just like it does such a good job at Nani being like, please don't do this to me. Like I feel like every like mom, older sibling, whatever, like you know it's gonna set off like your toddler, and you're like, oh my god, please don't say that. It's gonna be horrible for me. And then she makes her recover.
And I also just love like everything about that whole scene. Like I have a couple things down from that when like he goes like hi and then hugs her, and it's like supposed to be a dog, and it's just like what is happening? And then she picks
He
him,
looked
like,
at that poster on the back of like
Yeah.
the dog and the kid hugging. So he's like, that'll be me.
Yeah. And then I also liked outside when he barks, and then that red-haired lady comes and sprays and goes, bad dog, barking at nothing, but there is something there. It's just like that whole scene was so funny to like have this build up that like obviously Nani like is not happy about this whole situation because it's this random dog looking thing that's probably not a dog.
That was dead this morning.
Exactly. But like Lilo loves him and is just like right away the instant connection I thought was so funny to me and so cute.
Yep.
Yeah. And he becomes like, as the movie goes on, like more of a pet / friend. But in the beginning there, when he's like doing like the arf, 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 he's just like an alien
Well, he's just
monster, like just pretending to be a dog, which is so funny to me that he's just like, yeah, I'm just going to put on my best dog performance right now.
Yeah. He watches like, and he doesn't like later. Jamba talks about that he has no memories. And so like, it's not like he's ever seen a dog before. And so he just looked at like the poster and then looked at like the other dogs in the pound. He's like, that's what I have to be for this little girl to like save me from like the laser that's about to like obliterate me.
Yeah. Like I also loved the whole side quest of like Pleakley and Jumba. I thought was so funny how they're like doing this. And I thought like their whole dynamic was hilarious. And I had one line from them where like I think it's at the restaurant that Pleakley gets like bit on the head. And then Nani goes, your head's so swollen. And Jumba goes, no, she's just ugly. Like that I was literally like tears. I thought that was hilarious. And that's kind of what you said about that's like on the line of like, that's just like so funny. Yeah. But like adults and kids would find that funny for sure.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like it's a movie that's like, I just watched it with my students and there were some parts that like totally go over their head.
Yeah.
And so like on the surface, it kind of can be sad. The one like overview that I looked at to read said like a parentless Lilo. And I'm like, whoa, like that is like brutal to just hit with that, like describe her that way. But it took like my kids were like, well, I don't like who is Nani? And so we like paused and had a conversation that like Lilo and Nani's parents aren't there anymore. And so like Nani is older, so she has to take, but like kids can watch it and enjoy it without having to understand that Lilo's parents aren't alive anymore. So I think that like I was going to say this, you were talking about characters earlier. I think that there's one character that everyone can relate to. Like it could be Stitch, it could be Lilo, it could be Nani, it could be David. Like David just wants to help and like is in love with Nani. And so I feel like there's like so many characters that you can relate to in this, like as a kid and an adult.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's a good mix of like you said, a story about something that's very real to so many people that have things happen. And then you kind of have to like roll with the punches. And it's like, of course, when Cobra Bubbles comes, like everything is going wrong because of course it would. That's how everything happens in life, where when you want things to be great and perfect, it's like every possible thing could go wrong. And like Lilo doesn't fully understand like the implications, but Nani does. So Lilo is like laying there playing Elvis and melding the words and has like the door all like made up. Whereas it's like now's the worst possible time that you could be doing this because this guy's coming here to like inspect us basically to make sure that I'm doing like a good job.
Well, and like later, and like we're kind of jumping all around, but I feel like this is like how, because it's such a short movie, like everything kind of happens. But later when Nani is like kind of describing to Lilo, like we may have to like not be together. She's like, well, like, but like people know you're nice. Like Lilo thinks that like, oh, like I can, like somebody will give you a job and then all of it will be fixed because it's like Nani's job as now the adult to not let Lilo see like kind of how bad things really are.
Yeah.
And Lilo's age in this kind of confuses me because when they hold Lilo, she's like a toddler. Like Nani will like hold her like when like she first yells at her and she like gets in bed. And then like later when like in like the surfing scene when like David's holding her and then pass her to Nani, like she is like a baby. Like she's
scoop her up.
Teensy. But then she's like roaming around the island with a Stitch, like buying like, I don't know, like frozen ice. And
she goes to the store to buy peanut butter and then goes to the ocean by herself.
Oh, that's I wanted to actually talk about that part next. The beginning, it opens so strong. I feel like this movie.
She's getting in scraps at the place there. She's fighting people. She's like, she punches her, bites her.
And then like, bites her when she talks about biting her later is so stinking funny.
There are 3 jokes back to back in that opening sequence, like where she shows up at dance class late, that all 3 of them absolutely kill me. Like it is like immediate. And I'm sure you might have one of them written down, but it goes to like her diatribe about Pudge and like all that to like why she has to buy Pudge the peanut butter sandwiches, and then just immediately
I'd be an abomination.
And then just immediately into punching that girl in the face. It's just like right in a row. I don't know, like 45 seconds, and it is such a strong opening.
Well, and that's what like I think that like when Heidi was talking about like why she likes Lilo, like her just being that. Like, she's like, well, like, I'm late because because it's sandwich day. And he's like, what is sandwich day? And he's like, well, like on Tuesdays, I have to bring Pudge the fish a sandwich. And
Yeah.
Nani told me I had to bring him tuna. Do you know what tuna is? And then he goes, like, why do you have to bring Pudge a sandwich? He goes, he controls the weather.
Pudge
Like,
controls the weather.
like,
It's
Totally
so little
did.
kid. It's so true.
Also, I think it's in the opening scene when she's rushing to get to her dance thing. When she takes the photo of the person with the ice cream without a shirt on and is like has the sunburn,
And she's in awe. She just goes,
and then later you see that she just has a wall full of photos of people. Like, that is so funny and just so random. But it's like those sort of things that you're just like, what? Like, how did they just like add that into this movie? But it's like so hilarious.
she reminds me of a kid that I have at our daycare who you'll talk to, and she seems like she's like a 20-year-old woman in this toddler body. I think that's a Lilo. She has like so many things, and then I think like as she grows, kind of like throughout the movie, and you see more about like her and her past, I think that she gets like very real about like how people kind of don't stay around. She really has nobody else like except for Nani. And like I know, like you said, like we're kind of all over the place, but I think that like all of the characters have really strong growth, like from Stitch to Lilo to Nani, like throughout the whole movie, they really do grow and change to be very different from where they were like when you meet them for the first time.
Yeah, and I think they like kind of show like, because Lilo obviously has been through a lot, but she's still little, so it's like that fine balance of like she's been through so much, so it's like impacted her in like a certain way, and
Yeah.
like, but then at the same time, like she doesn't still understand everything because she is so little, so it's
Yeah.
like that kind of balance between the two.
And I think that like some of Lilo's weirdness lends to like showing that she's just been alone forever.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like I was like looking at Scrump back here actually, and like
Yeah.
in the opening scene when she talks about like, I pretend that a bug's laid eggs in
Yeah,
her head.
head's
Like
too big,
her
so I
head's too big.
yeah, so I pretend it's a
And
bug,
like
yeah.
the friends are like, what are you talking? Like they're playing with like dollies that are like brand new from the store, and she's got this like sewn together. And like later when she's talking about family with Stitch, she says like we don't have very many toys. So like
Yeah.
Scrump like is her one toy that like she plays with. And so for her, like she's one of those kids where you're right, like teaching kids, there are kids that get it. Like there are kids
Yeah.
that are funny, not just kid funny, like they're just funny. Like as
Yeah.
an adult, they would be
Oh, yeah.
funny. And I feel like that's Lilo, where she just like says things that are so weird, but underneath are like actually hilarious.
Yeah, like she's like, because she's been alone like so often, because Nani's always rushing around, doing work
Working.
and trying to support them, and she's had to like really find herself and cultivate these niche interests, like taking pictures of large tourists and making dolls and making peanut butter sandwiches for a fish that she recognizes. So it does provide such a strong sense of like self and character, and I feel like you get a really good sense of kind of what Lilo's all about. Even though she is like a relatively innocent child, you still get like a really strong sense of self because she is kind of forced to be her own person, because she doesn't get to just hang out with a group of people or whatever and kind of like assume a group identity or anything like that.
And the pictures of the people, like Heidi was talking about later when she has them all on the wall, it's like Nani's in the room with her and she goes, the camera's full again. And then it pans over and she goes, aren't they beautiful? And Nani just has, like, you can tell like she's been developing these weird film roles for Lilo forever. And she just like has to do it because it's what Lilo's into.
Yeah.
And she doesn't say a word about how strange it is. She takes pictures of these sunburnt tourists all the time.
Like I can picture her going to Walmart being like, here, like, and they go, oh, you're back again. And it's like, yeah, print out some pictures. And they all print them. They go, here you go. Here's your pictures. It's so funny.
Yeah, they walk in and like all of the photo people are just whispering about them.
Oh yeah, Nani's here again. But I also think that it's interesting how like Lilo kind of becomes like Nani to Stitch, I think, a little bit, where she then really takes on, like, I think that I wrote it there,
Yeah.
which is a line that you really loved about
Sorry.
like her kind of like being like, we can raise you, like, and we'll teach you to be good. You can be like our baby and we'll make sure that you're good. Like, I think is it like, it's kind of how Nani is with Lilo. And I think that she kind of takes on that where like, like I want to keep you here, like with us, like, and Nani's not going to have it if you're like acting all crazy. So we got to make you good so you can stay with me because I don't want to be alone. It's
Well,
like,
and I think it might help Lilo start to understand Nani a little bit too, because like before that, and I still don't know how old she is, but she has nobody to kind of like foster care over. And so she thinks that Nani's just being like the mean older sister, like being mean just to be mean. But like it's a responsibility she has to do. And then you're right, like she takes on that responsibility with Stitch. And so I think it helps her to understand that Nani isn't just being mean to her because she doesn't like her. This is what she has to do.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and I think it does a really good job of like developing. I don't know if empathy is the right word for like, but for both sides of the relationship.
For sure.
Like for Lilo, Stitch like rolling himself up into a ball and like causing havoc around the house
Ripping up her blue period.
Yeah, is the equivalent of Nani being like, Lilo, like the social workers here, you have to get it together. Like, why did you nail the door shut? Like this, like it's exaggerated, but it is kind of like scaling, and at the same time, we feel for Lilo because she's really just a product of kind of how her life has turned out through no fault of her own. Where Stitch, he's a chaotic little monster, but he's in the same boat, right? Like he was created like a week prior to him landing in Hawaii and was kind of engineered to be a certain way, and it's like having to go to the extreme to try and fight that that determination that was kind of made for him. He doesn't have a ton of choices in that regard. He was programmed to do something. So sort of Lilo is struggling to come to grips with that, even though she is, in another relationship, she is that kind of alien space monster to her older sister who's just trying to make things work.
Yeah, she also has lots of moments too that I think are just like very classic, like little kid. Like the one of them when she goes into Nani's room at like 7:15 and goes, "Nani, look." And Nani's like, "Oh, like, okay, what?" And she just opens his mouth and puts his finger on the record, and it's like he can play music, and it's just like a classic, like
she's just like
the adult person doesn't really care, but to Lilo, it's like, this is so cool that he can do this. And it's like so early in the morning that it's like, why would you bring him in here to do this now? I think is just so funny. And then I think, like I said, she gets so just like she made me cry at one moment when she said to Stitch, like, if you want to leave, you can leave. Like, and then he's gonna leave, and she goes, like I think she said, it's okay, like I'll remember you because I remember everyone who leaves. And it's like, that's just so like, wow, that just like puts into perspective her character, that she really like has had these people come in her life, whether it's those mean girls at the Hawaii or the dance place,
Mavis or whatever her name is.
Yeah, like, or him, like it's just very, yeah, like I think like yeah, she goes from one side to the other, like, or when she even says to David like that, like she read Nani's diary, like I thought that was hilarious. Like you
that's what my kids, my students lost it.
Yeah,
like
so funny.
She likes your butt and fancy hair.
So good. So I just think she honestly, after watching this, is like a Disney stand-up character to me, where they did so good with her. They wrote her so well. Like you said, whoever wrote her needs to come back, because he can clearly write characters who are funny like that. I think that's just so real and so cool. So I love Lilo.
Well, and I think that it's crazy to have a group of characters who like you can't really relate to. Like there's an alien, they like live in Hawaii. It's not really a place that is like us. Like their day-to-day is nothing like us, but you can understand their characters so well in less than 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think that part is crazy. I think that there is not really a time, I was trying to think about it, if there's a time where we were watching that I felt like there was like a lull. Like I felt like there was like any downtime or like something that I felt like there should have been more action or something different needed to happen. And I think that the pace moves and starts developing the story immediately. Because I think that when we were talking about that first scene with her going to the dance class, that is Lilo. Like, and then like the next like the next time you see her friends, you get to know Stitch. Like Stitch pushes her off her bike, steals it, and then like drives away. And so I think that they do such a good job of getting you to know the characters so quickly and so deeply that you're immediately invested. Like we always joke like from our like original like YouTube friend group about David being like the Disney man.
Yeah.
And in that, I was like, before rewatching it, I didn't really have any connection to David at all, because I just thought he was kind of like a nobody character in this movie. Because I think if you watch it only one time, he's just a supporting role. But I think even watching it this time more, you see how like deeply David is invested in this family.
Yes.
Like you don't, because I think it's hard too when you don't know how old any of these characters are. Like I don't know if Nani is 25 or 18, and so like I don't know if David goes home to like his parents' house every day, or if he's like living by himself. But I think that now, like watching it again, you get to see that like David is doing the same thing Nani is. He just is teetering on the line of like, I'm not part of this family, but I'm trying to help you because I love you guys.
Yeah.
And so I think that like you get to know those characters so well.
I think he's on a smaller scale, like a Kristoff to me, where he's always there when they needed him to be there, but he's not, like you said, he's not like invested too much where he's always there in that world. But I think that he wants to be. So he does these things where he's there when she needs a job. He helps her get a job. He's there when they're sad and he takes them to surf. Like, I think he's just always there when they need him to be. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I think he becomes like a piece of their Ohana the same way Stitch does.
Yeah.
Where like they're not really expecting it. They're just there because they want to be there for you. And then they end up like that ends up being their family is like the 5 of them. 4 of them? 4 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I also never realized, I guess, kind of transitioning to Stitch, is that he has like a lot of also depth like to him where he from beginning to end. And I thought like they did really good like little things where they like put little hints. Like I think there's a spot when Jumba says something about like there being big cities that he always whatever like is focused on those, and then Lilo right after goes, oh, like isn't it nice living on an island with no big cities? And he's like, oh my gosh, because it's like he's programmed to be doing all these things, but here, this location, he can't do any of those. So I think right from his beginning, when he gets to Hawaii, he has to go through all of these things that like he can't swim in water good, like all these things that this is just the super non-ideal place for him to be with his kind of coding. I thought was really cool.
And I think that like Jumba watching him, I think that he was such an important character in getting to know Stitch because he says like why would he risk drowning when he knows he can't swim? Because he doesn't understand, like he thinks that he is made in this code, that he can't break this like form. And that's like obviously his whole point of his character is that he can break this mold that everybody thinks he's supposed to be in, that he's only destructive. But Stitch is the character that makes me cry throughout the whole movie. Like at the end when they come back down and they've captured him and it's like kind of like the end. And Stitch is in his handcuffs and he goes, and I cried at school in front of my students. Like they're like eating lunch and I'm like turned to the side, like trying not to let them see. But he's like, Stitch has to get on the ship. And they're like, yeah. And he says, can Stitch say goodbye? Oh my gosh. Like just sobbing. Like he wasn't going to fight it. Like he's like the most powerful alien out of all of them.
Yeah.
And he probably could have gotten out of the handcuffs, but he's just like, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to do. Like my family's safe and I have to say goodbye. Like, okay. And that part, oh my gosh, gets me every time. I just sob when he's just like, Stitch has to get on the ship.
And it's just like when like she says yes and he goes, thank you. And then he just like he's so polite. And then when he's down there, like I watched, I think that part 3 times when she says, who are like who is this? Like, and he says, this is my family. We're not like whatever. We're not big. We're broken, but we're good.
We're
it's
little,
good.
but we're
little
broken,
and broken, but good.
Still good.
Sobbing, like literally so way too much for me. And he's like, I did this on my own. I found them on my own. And you're just like, gosh. Oh my gosh. And then when he waits with the book out in the woods and he's like waiting there and
he's saying,
like,
I'm lost.
Yeah. And then it's just like he has so many moments where you're like, this guy is just pulling on every heartstring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's actually, I don't know, to go maybe like slightly negative. That's kind of one of my only real issues with this movie is that I think that he gets the short end of the stick a lot in the middle of the movie. That's like true. A big point of the middle of the movie, it is kind of structured like an arc, right, where they're going to go through the struggles. But, you know, I think, and maybe this is kind of just upon a rewatch, like throughout the middle of the movie, it's very evident that like he's making efforts and making strides, and then when things go wrong, yeah, it's not necessarily like completely his fault, and he ends up taking like a ton of the blame. And you know, maybe it's just a way to kind of get you to really feel bad for Stitch because he puts the sad ears on, and you do really feel bad for him. But that I think is kind of one of the few issues that I have. Like Lilo dresses him up like Elvis and is like, you're just going to be Elvis. Like, I'm not going to actually do the work to make you like actually like a good citizen. You're just going to be Elvis and you're going to sing and dance. And then he gets overwhelmed by the cameras and like freaks out a little bit. And then they're like super mad at him. It's like, well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't have like made him into a street performer right away.
But also like, Lilo's like might be 4 years old. So like, you don't know like if she can think through it.
Like Nani's
just trying to get a job.
Yeah. But then they take him surfing. Like, it's very clear he's like not really feeling the water, but they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then Stitch is drowning and does what drowning people do and like clings onto the first person that he sees, and Nani like kicks him down. And like I said, I'm probably kind of over expanding
Well,
this a
in
little
that
bit, but I
part,
do think that, and then at the end, he's just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go save Lilo. Like that's my friend."
but
And they're like,
hold
"Oh,
on.
okay, we forgive you. Thanks, Stitch."
In the surfing part, the only person not mad at him is Lilo. Lilo is the one who got dragged down by him, but she's not mad at him at all. She just wants to make sure he's okay.
No, but she was mad at him when he freaked out after she made him into an Elvis.
Well, the worst one for me in that is when she's applying to the coffee shop and he's killing it.
Yeah.
He is up on that little chair doing his little Elvis thing and he is rocking it. It sounds so good. And then the like glass breaks. Who cares?
Lilo tells Stitch to kiss that old woman. That wasn't his idea. He wasn't gonna kiss that old lady. Donnie would have gotten the concierge job and they would have been fine.
Yeah.
But no, I do think it's like, I think that's the only issue I have is that the emotional arc with the rest of the family, I think comes, and then at the very end, Nani's just like, oh, okay, yeah, like cool, Stitch. We'll get an alien spaceship when she like hated him. I don't know. Second before
well, maybe they just needed
hitting him in the head with a branch.
They needed like a part, and like they didn't because the movie still works. But like maybe it would have made you feel better about it if Nani had like said, you were always just doing these things because like you're looking for a family too. You know what I mean? Like now I'm looking for Lilo. Like instead she like does yell at him and then tells him to talk. And then he's like, okay, fine. And then she kicks him. Whacks him with a branch when he starts talking.
And we touched on it a little bit, but I do think they do the relationship of like Nani to Lilo is as Lilo is to Stitch, where I think it would have been nice to see a little bit more like acknowledgement
Stitch
once Lilo was removed from the equation. But it also brings Jumba back in, and I think that is like a sneaky underrated part of the movie. Like when they kind of team up at the end, and Jumba's like, "Yeah, okay, like I'm on board." You know what I mean? Like he kind of evolves as well, where he would have at the beginning easily would have traded Stitch in to get his freedom and get back to doing whatever he wanted to be doing. But at the end, he was like, "Yeah, like this little blue guy like totally changed. Like I'm bought in." He's very persuasive.
But I like that he doesn't put up a fight. Like it's just like Stitch asks him, and he's like, "Why would I do anything for you?" And he says, "Please." And he's like, okay, fine.
And he goes, he's so persuasive. I also loved in that scene when Nani comes and Pleakley says, don't interact with her. Like or one of them says, don't interact with her. And they just turn and then they're kind of looking a bit, but they're not. And she's like, just like standing there. I thought that was so funny. I thought like their dynamic was hilarious where Pleakley was like pretending to be this like wife to him, I guess. And then at one
when
scene,
she puts the wig on it.
And then it's kind of like this, and then she like takes it off, or sorry, he takes it off because he has the wig on. I think is so funny. I just thought like their whole dynamic, and then I also love how the whole movie Pleakley talks about how he knows all this about like mosquitoes and stuff, and then Cobra Bubbles goes, "Yeah, we tricked a whole bunch of aliens like into thinking like this about mosquitoes." I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was fun, and I thought like they're super good side characters in this story.
Well, that's what I was actually thinking about Jumba and Pleakley. I feel like you could make an entire series just them being the main characters.
That's the animated series is a lot of that. I think they're way more involved in the sort of sequels and animated series because it's just like it's full on alien action.
Because I feel like they could stand on their own. No big Stitch or even Leroy. I don't think that they would need something like that.
Because this one, I mean, this one like all the stuff with Stitch is more like human drama, and then you cut to the aliens for them to do like wacky stuff like trying on wigs and getting attacked by mosquitoes and stuff like that.
They're nuzzling me with their noses.
That is such a it is such a funny premise from even the beginning. It's like, no, we can't destroy Earth because it is
and then they have like the viewfinder,
the little thing. It's so good. I also love like in the end when they battle in the house, there's like little things. Like I love when Stitch throws the punch buggy and just says blue punch buggy, and then it's like we're no punch backs. Like that's just like so funny how he just like picks up on little things. I thought was really
when
funny.
They're passing back like the stuffed gun, and he was like, "You're it," and he's like, "Yes, I'm it," and then it just goes off.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. They're just like bouncing back and forth. It's really
Jumba's just launching plates through the ceiling,
like the whole time Pleakley's like trying to like remain like some sort of like some semblance of like calmness and like normalcy, and like Lilo's like, "I'm gonna call like Cobra Bubbles," and he's like, "Don't do that," and he's like, "There's aliens attacking my house," and he's like, "No, there's not. Everything's fine." He's like, "Who is that?"
Yeah, it's so funny.
I just feel like there is like always things going on, which is why I feel like even though it is a short movie, it feels almost like you get the whole story, but it feels like an episode of a show because it goes by so quickly.
And I just think that there's always like a beat happening. Either it's like a really emotional beat that's making you feel sad or happy or whatever, or there's a joke, or there's like a fun kind of cartoony action sequence like Stitch throwing a car. Like there's always just something to keep you hooked, and it doesn't have to do, I don't think it has to do like a lot of, I don't know, like exposition or kind of stuff like that, because they have the characters so fully formed, kind of like we've talked about, where you get such a good sense of who they are and what they're about and kind of what they're trying to accomplish in the opening 20 minutes or whatever. You get to spend the rest of the runtime kind of just hanging out with them. And the middle of the movie really is them just like trying to make it work. Like there's no big like Jump and Bleakley are in the distance, but like the primary antagonist for the middle of the film is just like life. It's just trying to get a job and raise your sister and stuff like that. Like it's just life is hard sometimes.
Yeah. It also makes me really want to go watch, because I know that I've seen stuff like, or I probably way back in the day watched like either the series or like Leroy and Stitch and stuff. And I love all those other like experiments and stuff. Like I vividly remember that like is the guy who's Leroy, he's like yellow or orange or whatever.
Yeah, he's
no,
yeah.
625 is, that's not Leroy. Leroy's 627, I think, and he's like even worse than Stitch. 625 is the one with the big nose, and he's yellow. Yeah, he's 65. He's lazy. He likes sandwiches. Yeah, he's funny.
Okay, so like I feel like I would like to go
Leroy
watch
look like Lilo?
That stuff back.
The red one?
Yeah.
Leroy is just a red Stitch. I just looked it up.
But he's like mean and worse and like a bad guy kind of. He's like Stitch, original Stitch.
Yeah, Lilo looks mad at him.
Yeah.
There you go. So
65 is the funny one who likes to eat sandwiches or whatever. There's that DisneyChannel.com game where you would stack sandwiches. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it falls out of the fridge and you try to avoid the rotten meat. Spend a lot of time with that.
And I think when they did that Disney Channel night at Disneyland, they had a bunch of the like experiments were out there and you could meet them all. It was like Stitch and that guy with the sandwiches and Angel, like, and all those things were out there. Like, I think that's so cool how they hopefully can incorporate, like we said way earlier, like more of Stitch into the parks, because I feel like that it's a really good thing. But I thoroughly just like enjoyed the movie. And I think that it was nice to see like back to Lilo, how she's just like a kid being a kid. Like I thought was really nice to see in a movie where it's just this kid who likes to play with things, but also she made this like doll and it's like pretend. Like I think that was really fun to see how, like, I know for us, like I used to pretend stuff all the time that it was like, this is whatever, like you would just like do those things. And I think it was really fun to like see that. And it was like refreshing. And it was cool how this movie doesn't really have like a villain per se. Like it's more just that guy who would ever Gantu and that like
he's just like, he's just kind of like
doing
a
his,
cop.
he's doing his job.
Yeah. So I thought it was cool to tell a story where there's not like this like overarching villain like in a Disney movie, where it's like, I think like the villain is more just like you said, Tommy, like life is hard.
Yeah, I think it ties back into all of it, right? Like everyone's just kind of trying to do what's best for them and, you know, like their group or whatever. Everyone kind of thinks they're on the right side, and they all kind of are, right? Like it's, you know, the only one who's like kind of wacky is Jumba, and even he comes around at the end from evil genius or whatever he calls himself at the beginning to just being down to hang out in Hawaii. So,
and I think that all of the characters have like good and bad. So I think that like you can see, like you can be mad at Nani, but then you can see her point and love Nani. And like Lilo, I think that like as a kid character, like Brandon, your point made me think of this. Like showing that a child, like a kid can make mistakes and be bad and do things that are like naughty, but then not be a bad kid. Like I think that that's like something that's important for kids to learn, that like doing something wrong doesn't make you a bad person. You just like, so like Lilo's doing good and doing bad. Like towards the end when she's sitting down with Nani and she's talking about how like Mavis or whatever, the girl, she's like, I punched her. And they're like, you bit her? And she's like, well, I punched her and then I bit her. And so she's just like explaining like this is just what I did. I did something that was bad.
Yeah.
And then Nani talks about how like sometimes you can do all of the right things. Like you can try and want something really, really badly and it doesn't always work out. Yeah. And I think that sometimes, and I think that Disney is I think movies are getting better at it, but like there's always like and they lived happily ever after kind of thing. And in the end they do here, but I think that it was like such an important moral of the story to say like sometimes like you can be a good person, you're trying to do all of the right things and things just still don't work out. Like that's just how life works. But it's also crazy to me that this whole movie is 3 days. Like,
Yeah.
it feels like 6 months, and
Yeah.
it's 3 days that all of this is happening. Like,
Yeah.
Nani has applied for more jobs than most people do in their whole life in the span of 3 days. Like, that girl is out here
Yeah, she's
trying
a
to get a
hardworking
job.
lady. Yeah.
She'll do anything. She's like, I love concierging. It's so
Conciergerie is
yeah,
my
whatever. She
passion.
loves it. Like, and I think to your point earlier about how Lilo, like she does bad things, but isn't just a bad kid. Like she says that to Stitch, where it's like, I know why you push me or whatever. It's just like she knows that he has some stuff going on too. Like you know,
And
where
it started with her pushing her friends, like
yeah,
pummeling her friends. And so like I feel like that is like a nod back to that. Like, I know why you do naughty, bad things because that's why I do naughty and bad things.
yeah. I thought it was really good. Like I honestly was pleasantly surprised, and I feel like I'm glad that we started with this movie in our like little movie club, because I think it's one that like everybody loves, but I don't think that necessarily everybody would like click it on to rewatch it all the time. And I think it is a really good, like you said, it's like short, like there's no lulls, lots going on, lots of good characters, action, comedy. You'll cry probably once, if not multiple times. I just think that it's a really good movie, and I feel like it's one that like now if I have a choice to put it on like at a daycare, like I would put it on because it's maybe one that like kids wouldn't have watched or seen like in a while. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I think like it's one that I don't know really anyone who'd be like, "No, I really don't like Lilo and Stitch."
Yeah.
But I think people, like you said, don't realize how much they might like it if they haven't watched it
And
in a
that was
while,
me.
because it's one of those things when you think about it, like you can think about it like surface level and you're like, "Oh yeah, I like Lilo and Stitch. Like Stitch is funny and cute." But then when you watch it, like I didn't think we would have 45 minutes worth
No.
to talk about of this movie, and it like was really easy and really quick
Yeah.
to kind of dive into what this movie actually is when you watch
Yeah.
it as like an adult.
And I don't even know if we've said Ohana once, and it's
No.
like a huge part. It's a huge part of the movie. Like, you know what I mean? I think there is. It's like the iceberg, right? There is so much going on beneath the surface that you might not think that it does have going on if all you see is, like Stitch merchandise where he's standing on his head or whatever. Like, I think you can very easily assume that it's kind of just like I don't know, like a wacky, gross out humor kids movie, which I think is
Just
totally
like a
reasonable.
silly,
But
wacky
that's
time.
the twist on it, and like that kind of heart behind it is what makes it so special. I think is that it does have like an alien that eats his boogers with his tongue, but then by the end of that movie, you're like, this is like the cutest thing. This is the nicest little guy I've ever
My
seen
students
come
were
across the
in.
screen.
They were in
Yeah.
that scene where Stitch picks his nose with his tongue. They were like, "Okay, yep,
Yeah,
never seen it, but I'm
we're in.
into it."
You also super laughed at when Lilo sprayed him with the bottle.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Heidi loved the whole thing about the bottle. Like and she just turns and goes, and he's just like, oh, like,
and then he gets mad at her, I think, or something.
You loved that.
He like attacks her.
There was a lot of moments, and I feel like for us, I feel like to laugh at a movie that much, I was not expecting, was like a really pleasant surprise. Where I like was doing notes because I'm like, I'm not gonna like know all of these parts that I love. So like I took down notes and I was like, there are so many one-liners in this that I think are hilarious. Like,
Yeah,
it's so funny.
I was
You
gonna
were
say,
cracking up.
do you want to read the one-liners, like if you have them written down? Because I laughed a lot.
Kind of some of them, like I've already
Might have
said,
touched
but
on, yeah.
like the bad dog barking at nothing, I thought was hilarious. That
Yeah.
like I laughed a lot when they said don't interact with her. Hilarious. Little things like those that I've kind of already said were like a lot of things that just really made me laugh, or like even things that maybe weren't supposed to be funny, like the look how curious the puppy is, like hysterical. Like I was laughing. I don't know if you have any other ones that you really loved, but
yeah, no, the opening one I think is so funny where she's going on this big rant, like I'd be an abomination.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, why do you bring this fish up peanut butter sandwich? Well, it controls the weather.
Pudge controls the
and
weather.
then the other girl is just like, you're weird or whatever, and then just socks her right in the face. It's just such a funny, like,
we had to pause
45-second
it.
transition.
I think my mom called or something, and so we paused it, and Lilo is like fist to face, like connecting with her.
I also liked when Cobra Bubbles is talking to her and Nani's behind being like this, and then she at first is understanding what Nani wants her to say, and then after she's not, and she's like she like disciplines me
real good,
and he's like
5 times a day.
like so funny and just so good. Like that was just hysterical.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of physical humor that cracks me up too. Like whenever Stitch puts his feet in his mouth and then rolls up into a ball and rolls away, and then just like messes some stuff up in the house and then does the same thing and rolls away.
It's
Yeah.
like
That
it's
cracks me
like
up a
his
good bit.
zoomies. He like is like a dog who like can't control it, and he just like. And then the other one, the physical humor, when Stitch like wags his butt as like a nana boo boo to them, like he goes on his head and like puts his little tush in the air. That part always cracks me up.
That's funny too.
Super funny. I thought it was so well done, and I'm so glad, like I said, this was our first one because it was just really pleasantly surprised with how great it was and how much I liked it.
Yeah, so we'll have to have everybody vote, I guess, again for our next one.
Yeah.
So it'll be in another month. So we're gonna try and shoot for the last Monday of the month every month.
I think so.
So if you've made it this far listening, we appreciate you. If you have any ideas that you would like, maybe Brandon, do you think you could throw that as the
I will for
one
sure.
of the
I'll stick it
questions?
as our little box for this episode. It'll be which movie next do you want to see?
Perfect. Yeah. So on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you drop what movie you'd like to hear us talk about next. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment down below. Let us know if you agreed with our takes, if you thought that we thought way too much into Lilo and Stitch and you just do think he's a wacky blue alien. Let us know as well. But only if you are subscribed. Make sure you subscribe. We really appreciate that. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure that you also follow us. Give us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate that. And we'd love to read your comments. So if you're listening on, I believe, Apple, you can leave a review.
Yeah.
So we would love to read that. We kind of go over those notes every time we get back together when we record the next week's episodes. We love to see how you guys are enjoying us. But next episode, we will actually be answering your questions. We actually got so many that we may have to break it into a 2-parter or answer as many as we can and then kind of make it like a segment of another video. But if you have any questions after listening to this, let us know. You can always leave it on YouTube. You can also find us at the Park Squad Pod on Instagram. So make sure that you give us a big thumbs up and you follow along. And I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Mahalo.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.